Welcome to a simple life. Now, you look behind me, I have mowed down my cover crop. Now, I've mowed it down for a reason, and we are gonna plant some more cover crop here. But the reason I mowed it down, well, is because it was time to mow it down. Now, this is something I did because I felt like it was the right time to do it. But then I talked to the farmer who I bought the seed from, and he told me I did it perfectly, and I told him it was just dumb luck. Literally, dumb luck. Let me explain. So what we have here is a Paul's naked oat. When I was talking to him, he said the time to cut it is after it has gone to milk, but before it becomes doughy. As you can see right here, we have a bunch of these oats, and there's some ladybugs on here too, but these oats, if you squeeze them, they should squirt out a little bit of milk. And you can see it right there, a little bit of milk coming out on my fingers, and I'll show you. Usually the top one is the first to go, and then they go one after another. There you go. You can see a little bit of milk coming out. Now, why do you want to wait for your, in this case, oat, to go to milk? Well, because now the roots are pumping all the good enzymes and sugars and proteins and everything up into the top of the plant. If you wait a little too long, what happens is those oats become doughy. And that means that it's starting to put all that energy into the seed to create a seed. And then you wait a little longer and you actually have a seed. So right now you have all the energy, all the good stuff in the stalk of the plant going up. So that's why we want to do it right now. I did not know that until I talked to the farmer who grew the oats for me. And when I talked to him, he gave me this whole entire breakdown. A lot of stuff I didn't even understand. But to be honest, I understood enough to know that I'd done it right. And the best part is, now I know something I didn't know before. Because see, when it came to cover crops, I never really understood when was the proper time to terminate them. I knew before they go to seed, but beyond that, I didn't really know. Well, now I have a new perspective on terminating my crops. So now for my cover crops, I know there's a window of opportunity I have to terminate them to get the maximum amount of food for my soil out of them. Let me show you what this looks like, and then I'll take you over to the other area, and I want to show you kind of what that area looks like too, because that's changed quite a bit. As you can see, I came through and I have mowed all this off, and it looks pretty good. There's a lot of good food on the ground for the soil. So in the future, when I do this, I'd love to come in and throw a silage tarp on top of this. Thing is I'm not putting a silage tarp on top of this because I don't have any plans of planting something right now. What I'll probably do is come in, put some more seed down, and help this area to take off again with another crop. Probably ryegrass, or maybe another oat, I'm not sure. All right, but now let's go over and I'll show you what it looks like over in our pumpkin patch, and you'll see the big difference between the pumpkin patch before and now. We've been calling it the pumpkin patch. It's not really a pumpkin patch. It's got a lot more in it than just pumpkins. But this is our pumpkin patch, and next to it was our cover crop, and you can see I also have terminated that. Now over here we had wheat. So with the wheat, I don't know if it's the same type of situation as the oats, but what I know is that this has not actually gone to seed yet, and so they're still developing. So because they're still developing, but they're right there, I decided to terminate this because what I don't want is a weed crop. What do I mean by a weed crop? I don't want all the wheat going to seed and then having this area with tons of wheat growing in it without being controlled. I was looking to create some fodder to feed the soil. So I'm also not going to come in and put tarps down on top of this. Not yet. We are going to get there. I'm going to come in and I'm going to put some more cover crop in here. This time I'm going to put it denser. Last time it wasn't quite dense enough, but I didn't know how thick it was going to come up because in the past I used ryegrass, and the ryegrass comes up really thick, but it's also much smaller seeds, so maybe I just put it down thicker. Still experimenting. So while we're working on this area, I want to show you the difference between areas that have a silage tarp over them to choke out the weeds and sterilize the soil a little, and the areas that don't. Because if you remember, right behind me, right here, we put silage tarps down, but my silage tarps weren't big enough to cover the whole area. So if you look right here, you can see there's a lot more weeds. I mean, a lot more weeds. And then you can actually see the break. It's right here of where there's just the cover crop and where's the cover crop plus weeds. And if you look, it's very obvious where the silage tarp was and where it wasn't. What can I do about this? Well, I can bring a silage tarp back in, and to be honest, I was planning on eventually bringing a silage tarp in on this side. I just didn't have enough time to do it before we started planning on this. And I also wanted to see the difference between just tilling and using tillage plus a silage tarp. And well, it's very drastic. I mean, it's seriously drastic. Okay, now I am still not done giving you updates, but here you go, one more thing. Remember I talked about fixing the terrace that I cut in? Well, I fixed them. And here we are, we have two areas. And you can see I've been running a little bit of water in here just to soften up the soil, so that way as I prep this for gardens in the future, I had a little bit more moisture to work with because the ground was pretty dry and hard. So what we have is we have about 15, 16 feet wide area. I'm gonna be coming in over the next week or so, and I'm gonna be putting silage tarps over this whole entire area. I have some, I just need to pick them up. Actually, they were given to me, and they're very nice ones. And so we were gonna put one here that should cover almost this whole area, and then I'll come in and I'll put another one right here that'll cover this area. I'm gonna do a lot of work to build up good, nutritious soil here. You may be wondering, well, why don't you just leave it as is and plant into it? Let's talk about that. So while the soil looks really healthy and it looks like it has plenty of life in it to raise good crops, it's not completely true. There's some real issues with some of our soil we have here. Some of it has to do with the fact that it's very heavy in clay. Got a lot of clay content to it, and so because of that, it can get compacted really easily. Matter of fact, if you just water it, it'll compact. The other issue we have is much of this area has been tilled over and over and over again for the last, we'll call it 65 years. Herman's done a lot of tilling. I don't know if this area has been tilled for 65 years, but I know for the last 20 years, it's probably been tilled 5 or 6 times a year. Yes, you heard me right, 5 or 6 times. That has really bleached and stripped out a lot of the nutrients that are here. You would think with everything that we did here, we came in, we did a lot of work, loosened up the soil, then we came in and planted. You would think the plants would really be doing good. And you look behind me, you're like, wow, that looks beautiful. It's green, it looks healthy. It's not exactly healthy. It's actually a little on the yellow side. It's hard to tell through the camera, but trust me, it's a little on the yellow side. It should be darker green. And I'll show you what I mean by that. This is a zucchini, but what you can't see is these leaves are actually a little on the yellow side, very much on the yellow side. And here's a second one right here. And you can see, if you look, you can see these leaves are a little greener than these ones. And the reason for that is I came in and I gave this a dose of weed juice. I did that about 2 days ago, and I came through and I dosed everything when it came to the plants that were growing here with weed juice because I was seeing a lot of this yellowing. But what I'm seeing across the board is yellow leaves. And it's not yellow because of lack of moisture, because we've been coming in and we've been watering about every other day and giving them a good drenching. That's not the problem. The real problem is nutrients. As you can see here, here's another one of our plants, and we're getting some yellowing on the leaves. And then all of a sudden the new leaves that are just popping up are nice and green. So when I saw the yellow leaves coming up and I realized that we were having an issue and I knew it wasn't a water issue, I started thinking about what it could possibly be. I thought, you know, the easiest way to test this is let's put some weed juice on it and see the results that we get. We are very quickly starting to see that the plants are reacting positively to their weed juice. And so we're gonna come in and we're gonna make sure we continue to do that. On top of that, in the future, we're gonna be putting compost in our beds that we build here. That will help deal with a lot of the nutrition issues that we're having. Now, I could get soil tests, that is true. But I'd have to test all over the place because as we've seen in other areas, it depends on what was growing there. There's parts of this field where the oats are only 6 to 8 inches tall. There's other parts where they're a foot tall. So we're gonna see drastic differences in our soil tests if we test different areas. So that's why I'm not doing soil tests right now. If I get to a point where I'm really seeing some weird stuff happen with my plants, then we'll start looking at doing soil tests. And I'm putting together the fact that I know that this area was tilled over and over and over again, 4 or 5 times a year potentially, for a very long time, 20 years maybe. And I'm going, you know what, that makes sense with what I'm seeing when it comes to the fertility of the soil. But now we know that good fertile soil doesn't have to be tilled all the time. As well as to lock in your moisture, you may not want to till on a regular basis. It may be something where you do a chop and drop, kind of like what I'm doing with my cover crops, where I'm chopping them up, leaving them where they're at, letting them feed the soil, and potentially create a little bit of shade on that soil. The other thing I'm doing while I'm in here is I'm coming through, and wherever I see blackberry bramble starting to grow, I put on a pair of gloves and I'm just pulling them out. And they're coming out really easy. And the reason they're coming out easy is because the soil is still moist and we have plenty of moisture in it. And so when you pull on them, the whole root and everything pops right out. Let me show you. There's one of our blackberries right here. We're just gonna give it a little pull. Man, that one's really in there. There you go. That's what we're looking for. Let's see if we can get this other portion. Oh, and that one comes out too. So I've been doing that, pulling these out. Since the ground is nice and wet, we're getting most of our root systems out. So that's kind of what we've been doing with the blackberries. We just walk through every couple days and we pull the ones that we see, and it's helping us control those. And as we continue to do that, we will have less and less. You have to remember, it was only 4 or 5 months ago, this whole thing was covered in blackberries, old grapes, and all kinds of nasty little shrubberies and trees and everything like that. But this is just part of working the land. One more thing, very soon, maybe putting a video out because there's a lot that's gonna be changing around here. And I wanna tell you about it before we do it, so you guys are on the same page with me. All right, well, the boys are ready to get some work done with me. Yes, they have been behind me, following me around this whole entire time. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today on A Simple Life, and we will see you guys next time. Have a good one. Bye.